Thanks. Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Matt Decker. I'm the Director of Conservation and Stewardship with the Orange County Land Trust. And this is our first time using this hop-in platform. Thanks to Vision Hudson Valley and those sponsors for setting this up. Really excited to be here. We're expecting 2 other panelists. We're having technical difficulties at this moment, but I think they should be on soon. But let's get started with a question before I invite Bert to introduce himself. Let's ask for people to put into the chat. So this session is about trails and regional trails development. Just when you think about trails, when you think about that word, what location or what trail comes to mind for you? Just go ahead and type that in. And while we're waiting for that, Bert Thielander is here. Bert is the chair of Vision Hudson Valley's Pathways Committee. Bert, you want to introduce yourself and say a little about what the Pathways Committee is?
Yes. And again, to all of you folks who have logged in, we really appreciate your interest in trail development. We'll do our best to describe how we've tried to move that forward within Orange County and try to collaborate with other organizations in other counties and other organizations outside of our region. I'm a resident of Orange County. I've been participating in the Pathways Committee, as Matt described, for I think 10 to 12 years. The Pathways Committee is a group of people who are interested in trail, non-motorized transportation options in Orange County. We meet every 2 to 3 months. We've been meeting virtually since the pandemic emerged last March. We try to promote collaboration across county agencies, parks, planning, tourism. We try to collaborate with not-for-profit organizations like Matt, Orange County Land Trust. Karen Barnes just logged in. He's from Sullivan County, and we also try to collaborate with New York, New Jersey Trail Conference and other not-for-profits to promote trail development. We have a mission statement, and we look forward to talking with you about what we try to accomplish and how we try to move forward over the next hour. So I think that's about what I wanted to describe, and I think Karen is in.
He was in for a second there, and now I don't see him, but maybe he'll be back.
Yes.
But I just see some answers coming in for like what comes to mind for trails, and go ahead and keep putting those things in. I see a lot of heritage trails are the first answer. Heritage Trail and Appalachian Trail. We've got Liberty Loop outside of Pine Island, New York. For me, I think of Scunnamunk Mountain, which I'm looking at right now through our office windows, and the trails up those mountains. So I think the point is taken that when people say trails, they mean a lot of different things. You know, some people mean heritage trail style, multi-use, paved through village nodes and through cities. Others think of, as first came to mind for me, Scunnamunk or the Appalachian Trail, a single thread of a footpath up a mountain into a state park, for an hour of solitude, a place where you can get away and just not see anybody for a long time. So those are 2 very different public assets. So there's no doubt that trails mean different things to different people. So I think this session, we've got a good representation of panelists from people who have expertise in different kinds of trails or different networks of trails. And there's no doubt at all that trail use across the board has increased over the past year as people look for places to get outside, especially places close to their home. And, trails have measurable effects on quality of life improvements, mental and physical health benefits, but they can also be part of a resilient transportation system of a region. Trail systems are always more useful and more fun when they are part of a connected system. I love being on the Heritage Trail and knowing that even if I'm not planning on going all the way to Goshen, that I could go to Goshen. Same on the Appalachian Trail. I love hiking on the Appalachian Trail. If I'm southbound, I'm like, I could just keep going all the way to Georgia right now. And the idea that there's a whole distributed network of trails out there makes my experience on that trail, more fun to think of the network. And it also makes it a more useful asset to the communities that those trails go through. So developing a good trail system means taking a regional perspective. And all of our panelists today have experience in working on trail projects in the context of a regional trail system. And let us see if Bert has already introduced himself. I see our planning commissioner, Orange County Commissioner of Planning, Alan Sorensen, is joining. Can you hear us, Alan?
Yes. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes.
Oh, good.
And Karen Barnes is trying to join. I hope he's able to join us shortly, but we'll just get started with this panel. And Alan, I'll start with you if you don't mind. I think
okay.
you just joined, but we were talking about trail systems and how trails mean different things to different people. Some, think of a footpath through the woods. Others think of the Heritage Trail in a way that they might be able to ride their bike to work from their home without being on a busy road. And that developing a good trail system takes a regional perspective. So I thought that we would just ask from your perspective at the county, tell us about your ideas for regional trail development in and around Orange County.
Okay, Matt, thank you. Well, I'm excited about the the trail development here in Orange County, the opportunities. And quite a number of years ago, I was involved with the Village of Walden, and just going out and working on their comprehensive plan. I was walking with the mayor at that time and the village manager, and I noticed these old bridge abutments. And I started asking about it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it's an old abandoned rail line, and the kids tend to hang out there, and it's a nuisance." I said, "Well, did you ever think about making this into a rail trail?" And so that was the catalyst for the creation of the Walden Wallkill Rail Trail, and it really took transformed that into what was at that time a nuisance in the community, and transformed it into a really important recreational amenity for the community. It's very inviting. It's used by a multitude of users, from people using their bikes to walking to parents with babies in their strollers, rollerbladers. So it's really become an important asset to that community. So when I started here in Orange County a little over a year ago, I had come to the county with a wealth of experience, dealing with trail development. And within days, one of the first things I started doing is taking a look at all the abandoned rail lines in Orange County and starting to map those out and getting a sense of future trail opportunities. The Department of Planning also houses Orange County Transportation Council, and part of our long-range transportation plan, there's a large focus on what we refer to as multimodal transportation system. So multimodal just refers to the ability to take different modes of transport to and from your destinations. And of course here, since the end of World War II, the primary focus has been on vehicles. But in recent years, thankfully, there's a growing interest and desire to get people out of their vehicles and pursuing alternative modes of transportation, bicycles and walking being one of those. So, the county has done a lot of work in kind of developing the backbone, if you will, of a regional multimodal transportation system in development of the Heritage Trail, which allows the users not only a recreational opportunity, but also an opportunity for an alternate mode of transportation, whether it's biking or walking to and from their place of employment, to other places, for enjoyment, and or just getting out to, get exercise. And in looking at that, and then, looking at opportunities to expand that system, we had Orange County Land Trust and OSI had reached out to us and brought to our attention a project that they're working on. Now we're working on in partnership with them to develop a significant expansion of the Heritage Trail in the form of the Scunnamunk Trail. So that will run from basically Gray Court in the village town of Chester in the vicinity of Camp Monroe up to Salisbury Mills. And I guess to answer your question, what I see, or my vision would be, in terms of the county's multimodal transportation system, a trail system that would allow a user to go from Salisbury Mills on a bicycle, go to Middletown without ever getting on a highway or roadway. It would be a separated bikeway system that they could go to and from. And ultimately, as the system is built out, I would envision the opportunity for someone in Unionville to take their bike on a rail trail system and go to the Newburgh waterfront. So that's kind of the grand vision. I think we have the opportunity to pursue that, and it's something that we're focused on.
Amazing, thanks. And we can't do a trails session without showing you some maps. So Alan, I do have the map of that Scunnamunk Trail if you want me to share that, and maybe we can talk a little more about that. Let me make sure I got the technology right here. Can you see it?
Yes.
Great.
We can. Yep.
I think, in speaking about this particular trail, that I think the critical piece in any trail development is collaboration. So in this particular segment, while it was identified as a potential rail trail in a number of different planning documents over the years, it was really the Orange County Land Trust and OSI that reached out to the county parks, Jim Brooks, myself in planning. I've been coordinating with my transportation team here in the planning department. So there are a lot of heads, kind of putting together to say, oh, this is a great idea, but, how do we get it from a concept to, bringing a project like this to fruition? So there are definitely a lot of moving parts, and it takes a team effort. And there's still a lot of work ahead, before this Scunnamunk Trail is, fully developed and people are out there, riding their bikes. But you can begin to see, if you look at that map in the context, if you look at the bottom of the Scunnamunk Trail, so that thicker green line at the bottom there is the Heritage Trail. So that when you look at that map, you begin to see really a regional separated bike system that traverses a significant geographic area of the county, but also provides connections to our existing regional transportation system. So allowing people to get to and from their place of employment, taking alternative modes of transportation, but also having the added benefit of providing recreational opportunities.
Well, and just to chime in on what Alan is talking about regarding abandoned rail trails, like I've been, as I think I mentioned earlier, I've been involved with the Pathways Committee for 10, 12 years, and I've been trying to collaborate, and I really appreciate Alan talking about the value of collaboration, collaborate with a wide array of interested parties on looking at what are the opportunities available in Orange County. I live in Western Orange County. There are so many abandoned railroad grades, the O&W, the Erie, like there's abandoned railroad grades from Middletown to Otisville, Otisville to Cutterbackville, Cutterbackville to Port Jervis, Cutterbackville up to Wurtsboro. And then there's abandoned railroad grades. I think Alan mentioned Unionville, like Unionville to Slade Hill to Middletown. There's really a lot of opportunities that we're becoming much more aware of about potential development of trails on those abandoned railroad grades. But as Alan said, and I think Matt alluded to, it's very complex to sort out. How do you get title to those railroad grades? How do you get funding to promote development of those railroad grades? How do you get other interested parties to supplement what Orange County government, like Alan mentioned, parks and planning, other funding resources, grants, county legislation to promote funding, state, federal. Alan mentioned the Orange County Transportation Council. That's a group of folks that meets every month. That's facilitated, I think, by planning. And they talk about like transportation funding, how that can be used to support some of what we're trying to promote in this dialogue. So it's as we've alluded to, there are many moving parts, but trying to prioritize what's available, like we just mentioned the Shinnemonk, but we're trying to get better at getting all the players together to say, this is what exists, this is what we can purchase, how do we get the funding, how do we plan the development and construction. So we're trying to get better at that together.
Thanks. And we do have some questions coming in the chat, which we can get to in a second. Feel free, everybody, to put questions. Let's have this be a dialogue. Absolutely feel free to ask questions of our panelists as we go, and we'll get to them as we go. But I love the idea of connectivity. We're talking about two different kinds of connectivity there between what Alan is talking about, what Bert's talking about. One is the multimodal and the connectivity of different forms of transportation and how trails can fit and be nested in a larger transportation system. And really, only parts of that are classified as trails, but it's helpful to think about trails in the context of that larger transportation system. And the trails that Alan was talking about, those are multi-use paths, appropriate for bikes. From the land trust perspective, I love to think of along the way, we have some of our preserves right off the Heritage Trail or state parks off of the Heritage Trail where, now maybe, multimodal transportation, you're getting off the train and you're getting on a trail with your bike, or maybe you're going out of your house with your bike and you're parking your bike on a trail on an OCLT preserve or a state park and you're going on, a bipedal-based part of the adventure for that day. So I think that thinking of that multimodal connection just makes trails more useful, more resilient, more connected system. And then what Bert's talking about is kind of what we had hoped Karen could cover part of, but maybe Bert, you can talk a little more about is regional connectivity, right? So those trails, how do these rails then connect into other trail systems that are happening outside of Orange County? Bert, I don't know if Karen's going to be able to join, but can you talk a little about what you know about the O&W work that he and folks have been doing in Sullivan?
Yes, I think Alan knows quite a bit about that also because he was very engaged with Sullivan County until he came to the planning department in Orange County. There's a group in Sullivan County, I'm not sure what the title of the group is, but they meet on a regular basis, somewhat like the Pathways Committee, to promote trail development in Sullivan. My understanding is they got a grant to study the O&W abandoned railroad grades in Sullivan, They got a grant. They had a study done. Alan can talk more about this because he knows more about it than I do. But they've come up with a plan to promote development of those railroad grades. And then those railroad grades connect with Orange County O&W railroad grades in the town of Deer Park. So we've begun to talk about perhaps connecting those railroad grades to get back to what Alan was talking about, multimodal transportation. And then the group, we're trying to collaborate more with them because a lot of their meetings have been virtual. I've logged into a couple of their recent meetings, and I think Alan and Karen are still very involved in that effort in the Sullivan County town of Mamakating. And then the other thing is we've tried to gather community perceptions on needs. We had a forum in Montgomery 5 or 6 years ago, or maybe 7 years ago. We had a forum in the town of Deer Park to have people come and speak with county planning, parks representatives, and other folks to find out about what people would want in different regions of Orange County to guide the planning process. So we've tried to get community input as well as some of the other inputs that Alan talked about, Orange County Transportation Council, and also the Pathways Committee. Am I answering your question?
Thanks. Yeah, and I can show a map, especially if Karen is able to join. I can show a great website on what they're trying to do in Sullivan County, reconnecting some of that former O&W right of way. I'm sorry, Alan. Did you have? I forget, Alan, that you have so much knowledge of Sullivan County too. Feel free to jump in on that with what you know about that work.
Well, yeah. I mean, prior to coming here, we did receive funding to do an O&W rail feasibility rail trail study. So that was completed about a little over a year ago. And it lays out a framework for, prioritizing which segments of the O&W, will be pursued in terms of, building out the system. But, that plan lays out a framework for doing that. And I think that is, very useful. We are currently here in Orange undertaking the West Central TLC study. Part of that focus is not only on, the vehicular transportation system, but also that study will also be looking at the rail segments here in Orange County. So, you first have to have, kind of a plan or a vision in place. And then with that, that helps to provide a framework for then pursuing funding to implement the projects. But I'm hoping Karen will be able to join us. But Karen has done a lot of work with the town of Mamakating. And he is focused on both the O&W as rail trail, but also the D&H Canal towpath.
Yes.
And there, I think, there's, if you think about the D&H Canal towpath, there is a pathway that basically that runs from, Port Jervis all the way up to, Eddyville in the town of Ulster. And so there's an opportunity for literally a regional trail system that could link the Delaware to the Hudson. And, so you think about some of those opportunities that are pretty incredible when you think about, a collaborative effort amongst counties to pursue those. But one thing that Matt was touching upon, which I think is important, even as I spoke about like the multimodal transportation system, like Matt, I think the idea is, to have that infrastructure there, but also to provide a multitude of opportunities for, what I see on the Scunnamunk Trail is the ability for someone in Goshen or Chester to take their bike up the Scunnamunk Mountain, park the bike, and go out, for several hours hiking. or ultimately to go even further further points east along that trail. So and even within our cities, I can see some pedestrian paths or walkways that feed off of that multi-purpose trail system.
And also the climate mitigation benefits of this, health, recreation. There's a lot of potential, as Alan and Matt have alluded to, getting people out of vehicles, getting people walking, bicycling, as Alan said, rollerblading, whatever it might be, to get from point A to point B without using fossil fuels. We'll have a lot of benefits. And then what Alan was saying about the Delaware and Hudson Canal towpath, I live right near that towpath in Western Orange County. We've been doing a lot of work at studying what can be done, but one of the challenges that exists is how to finance it, how to fund it. Grants, government allocations, government budget allocations. It's very, very challenging. And then also sorting out who owns it. How do you get the ownership to say, we'll give you the access to using this to develop the trails, sell it, whatever it might be. But that's also a distinct challenge that we're trying to work our way through. And there are a couple of questions.
Yeah, let's cover those. So I'm going to drop a link in the chat to, here comes Karen. So maybe he will be able to cover some of this, but I'm going to drop a link to the O&W and Sullivan County website, which has a lot of great maps that kind of put things in perspective on that project for me. But let's cover Karen's questions. Yeah, that Karen's asking of the Scunnamunk Trail, maybe this could be for Alan, does the new trail connect to the existing trail in Chester? So does the Scunnamunk Trail connect to the Heritage Trail?
The answer is it will. Yeah.
And the answer to that question is, it does, correct?
The answer is it will. We're working on, there's no obstacle to connecting it because the county owns Camp LaGuardia on both sides. But so we're working on the actual route of that is to be determined, but it will be connected.
Great. And Karen's also asking, have you been working with the Rails to Trails Conservancy? And the answer from me on that is kind of. The Rails to Trails Conservancy puts out some great guidance on kind of best practices around old rail right-of-ways and turning them into trails. The Open Space Institute, who I should give due credit on the leadership of the Scunnamunk project, the Scunnamunk Rail Trail project, they're the ones that are under an agreement with the landowner to purchase that 10-ish miles of rail trail. They have done other rail trail projects themselves, so their expertise is coming in quite handy on that project. But everybody kind of follows the lead of the Rails to Trails Conservancy, as they were the pioneers of really developing some best management practices around how to pull these projects off. I see Karen dropped off again, but
just to highlight, am I making a lot of, just to highlight what Matt's talking about, Rails to Trails Conservancy. I'm a member of that group, but we haven't formally connected. I'm not aware, as a Pathways member, of any effort to formally connect with that group. So that's a good idea to take a look at how to have more collaboration with that group, Rails to Trails. So I think those are the two questions. Are there any other questions?
We'll keep an eye on the chat for other questions. I'm just bringing up a map for our next segment here. Bear with me. So both Alan and Bert talked a little about the need to have a plan. And I wanted to take a minute to highlight a plan, which you may have seen, called the Highlands West trail connectivity plan. And I'm going to try to share my screen here for a sec. Bill, I see your question there, and I will definitely be getting to that. Thank you.
And I can answer that question about the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference. They have active membership on the Pathways Committee. There are 2 staff that take part in the meetings on a regular basis. We've been collaborating with them very actively, especially about how to measure trail use and also how to seek volunteers to promote trail maintenance, cleaning up trails, becoming stewards of trails. We've begun to talk about how we can develop that volunteer group to complement what the county parks, planning, and tourism has to offer. So short answer, yes, we are collaborating with the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference very actively.
And it's a fabulous transition into this plan, since the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference was one of 3 partners that came together for this Highlands West Trail Connectivity Plan, which I will put a link after to where you can read it online. It's on the Open Space Institute website. But Open Space Institute led the process, and the Trail Conference and Orange County Land Trust were part of developing this plan, which is, we've got these 3 kind of long distance trails, well, really 4 long distance trails that we are so lucky to have coming through our region. We have the Appalachian Trail, the Heritage Trail, really, the Long Path, which is a trail from basically the George Washington Bridge to Albany, and the Highlands Trail. And they kind of form a hub in what we called in this plan the Highlands West. That refers to the New York Highlands west of the Hudson River. And within this geography, we are lucky enough to have 6 different state parks, Bear Mountain, Harriman, Sterling Forest, Goose Pond Mountain, Scunnamunk, and Storm King, all along this kind of spine of the Appalachian Mountains that comes through and are called the New York Highlands in our region. And there's lots of trails. All of our organizations were already kind of working on various components of connecting these trails, making these kind of multimodal connections, or working on projects. And it was decided that it was time to come together and put all of those projects down in one single plan. The idea of this is the vision map, the resulting vision map that you see before you. There was lots of public and stakeholder outreach to develop this project and develop these ideas. It wasn't just kind of us in a room deciding what is important. We reached out to the communities to talk about how trails can or already are integrated into economic development in the local towns. And so the idea of this plan is to, create a resilient, connected trail system. A trail corridor can be just a recreational corridor, the Heritage Trail. I don't mean to say just, but it can also be a habitat corridor if it is surrounded by a lot of protected land, especially, we talked a little about climate change a minute ago. Trail, north-south oriented trail corridors that have enough protected land around them can also serve as a migration path, and connecting these state parks with trails has benefits beyond just recreational connectivity. Also has habitat connectivity ramifications. So how to connect these parks, how to protect these long distance trail networks, and how to integrate them into local economic development goals. That was the idea of this plan. And you can see the project that Alan was talking about is identified as number 14 on here. You can read a little about all of the projects here. I'll just show you one other map just to give you a flavor for this plan that, sorry to page through here. Let me just pick a random one. That, there are 5 different focus areas identified, and each of the focus areas has 3 to 5 specific projects that are mentioned. This is an effort to connect Black Rock Forest with Scunnamunk State Park. This, for example, this is a private property that has recently been purchased and will become part of the state park system, and that will connect these two sections of trail network. It's those kinds of projects that we wanted to put down all in one place so that we can all have something to plan from and work towards over the next few years. So I wanted to give that shout out, and now also circle back to the trail conference, because let me stop sharing here.
And just to highlight what Matt may be talking about, we have a member of the Pathways Committee, Andy Garrison, who's going to talk with us about the Long Path and the Highlands Trail opportunities within Orange County, so we're aware of what exists and what's being done to improve those trails. And trails do not only include paved or multimodal, they also include single path, like Matt mentioned, the Appalachian Trail. So we're trying to take a look at all trail options, not just multimodal, biking, rollerblading, things of that nature.
So we've got a good question coming in from Lewis. Do any of the panelists see any possibilities for funding from any of the federal government infrastructure programs or funding from New York State? Alan, would you take that one?
Well, there is some funding that has come out through Office of Parks and Recreation, specifically for trails, in the most recent round of the consolidated funding application. And so, there's some dollars there. Looking ahead, I would, with all the focus on, on climate change and, trying to get people out of their vehicles, I think it's kind of a natural that the more we can do to develop a truly multimodal transportation system and give people options to get out of their cars, will be fewer, vehicle miles traveled. It will lead to a healthier community, and I think ultimately a more resilient community moving forward. So I would hope that, with all the federal funding that's coming down, I would anticipate that some of this funding will be earmarked for that purpose.
Now, the Orange County Transportation Council is the group that takes a look at those funding resources, or is there another group, or help us understand that?
Well, the Transportation Council is, it's housed in the planning department. We're staffed to the Transportation Council.
Right.
So we're the MPO, for Orange, and we receive federal highway dollars as well as transportation dollars. So we get FHWA dollars, we get FTA, Federal Transportation Administration dollars, and so we administer those programs. But we're also looking, we're always, as the department, we're also looking out for other funding opportunities. So with the consolidated funding application process, we're looking at the funding for recreational trails programs, and we're pursuing some of those dollars. We're also on the lookout for the programs like DOT's Transportation Alternatives Program. There's, typically that program comes out every 2 years, although it hasn't been as consistent as it was. But and I've had experience with the, going back to the Walden-Wallkill Rail Trail. It used to be called ICE-T, the Intermodal Surface Transportation Efficiency Act. Then it became the Transportation Enhancement Program. Now it's TAP. I don't know what the next version will be. But that is also a good, funding opportunity as well. So we're always on the lookout for funding opportunities. But the thing I'll say about funding opportunities is you really need, as a community, have a pipeline of projects lined up so that when those funding opportunities arise, you can pursue them. If you're chasing chasing dollars to come up with a project,
Yeah.
they're unlikely to be successful.
Because we've tried to prioritize what's available in Orange County for trail development over the last 6 months to a year, because the Pathways Committee realizes the Pathways Committee, haven't done that very effectively over the last few years. And the other thing about and Alan, maybe you can help me better understand this, the Orange County Transportation Council, I think, has town supervisors, small city mayors, people that are members of that, because we want to try to educate those folks to complement the county department heads, the county legislators, DOT, New York State DOT, about the value of these non-motorized transportation options and the value that would warrant funding. So we're trying to get better at that.
Yeah, I mean, the makeup of the Transportation Council and the voting members, there's a wealth of experience and knowledge.
Yes.
And so they're very in tuned with a lot of these transportation and trail issues. And, I would be remiss, not to, point out that probably from our perspective in planning, the most important partner that we have is the county executive's office and the county legislature, because they set the policy. So our pursuit of trail development is consistent with the policies that have been set at that level. It's been a focus. It's been a priority for the county for many years, and so our work is within that framework, as well as within our profession, understanding the benefits and importance of having not only a multimodal transportation system, with trails for that purpose, but also, as Matt said, that opportunities off of those multi-purpose trails for walking, for hiking, getting into the out of doors, walking on paths that are less obtrusive, to the natural world.
Yes.
The beauty of Orange County is we have an opportunity to have all of that.
Yes. And we have 2 county legislators as members of the Pathways Committee, as is Alan, as is the Parks Commissioner, Jim Brooks, and as is the Tourism Director, Amanda Dana. So we're trying to get better at collaboration amongst all those groups, as we mentioned frequently during this discussion.
So thank you both. Up to now, we've been talking about, what funding, what opportunities, what, are the best practices for building and establishing new trails. Let's talk about maintaining trails, and talk about what it takes to do that. And this goes back to the question about the Trail Conference, that the Trail Conference has been very successful. The Trail Conference is a private nonprofit organization that partners with public entities, state parks, county, municipalities. These are usually the public entities that own and manage trails, but don't always have the expertise or the bandwidth to maintain those trails. It takes a lot to maintain a trail system, and there's a lot of funding sources out there for building trails, but there aren't a ton for maintaining trails. So I just thought that I would ask, I can throw it out to both of you, but maybe directing it to you, Bert, first, that are there opportunities for those public-private partnerships, which I think the Trail Conference is one example of a successful public-private partnerships where they steward trails on, say, state parks. Are there opportunities, are there models of public-private partnerships for the maintenance and stewardship of these trail systems once we get them built?
Well, budget resources are very limited, as you folks know more about that than I do. But we had a meeting about a month ago where we talked about how we could develop a stewardship proposal similar to like the Central Park Conservancy in New York City. Jim Brooks described his understanding of how that process has worked in New York. He talked about his budget constraints. I'm sure Alan has budget constraints also, staffing limitations. So we're trying to think about how do we get volunteers to collaborate with the public entities, parks, planning, other public entities, to maintain, provide stewardship of trails after they're built. The Heritage Trail has been managed by the Orange County since it was built 20, 25 years ago, but the county doesn't have the resources to do that for the planned Shenandoah Trail from Chester to Salisbury Mills. So we're in the beginning stages of trying to sort out how do we move this forward as far as getting volunteers to collaborate with the county government entities to sort out how do we maintain, provide stewardship for trails that we're going to develop. And we also need, as we've mentioned earlier, we need to get better at prioritizing what those trail development opportunities are. And we've reached out to the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference to get an idea about how they've been successful with managing those volunteers. So we haven't done that as well as we might, but we've begun to think about how we can plan that more effectively. Is what I'm describing, Alan, congruent with what your understanding is or other thoughts you have?
It is, Bert. And I think, thinking ahead, I think the development of public, private partnerships in a long-term, upkeep of the trails is critical. For those of us who, have walked hiking trails or, been on other trails, they're affected on a daily basis by Mother Nature, whether it's the branches growing or branches falling or, trees falling across the pathway. There is ongoing maintenance that, that's involved. And, I think moving ahead, we need to, have public-private partnerships where we can get volunteers involved.
Yes.
To help us with the maintenance.
But and have that be coordinated and guided by a small group of people, because it can't be haphazard. So that's something that we're trying to sort out. And maybe perhaps have a designated county staff person be the lead person that would connect with that group of volunteers, but the volunteers do most of the maintenance stewardship, but have regular communication, collaboration with the county leadership.
Yeah, it's something I'll reach out to Jim Brooks to discuss, because I suspect the lead on that side of it would be parks.
Yeah.
But there's plenty of room. I think there will be room for volunteers to participate in that process, and then everyone has a stake in the not only the development but also the stewardship of the trails.
Public participation. Yes. Yeah. So we've got about 5 minutes left. I just saw a chat from one of the people that tried to put this together. So other questions people have or anything that we want to highlight that we've not already highlighted?
Yes, I would love to highlight a little of OCLT's work, in that the main thrust of Orange County Land Trust work is to, protect land, but we're always thinking about trails and recreational connectivity. And a theme to our projects we've been able to complete in the last couple of years, and some that are coming up, is trail access to existing protected places. So we're definitely always on the lookout for opportunities to, purchase a piece of land or get an agreement with a private landowner that unlocks access to an existing protected land that there's no trail to yet. And we completed a couple projects in partnership with the state parks, with the Palisades Interstate Park Commission, to add land to Sterling Forest State Park in the vicinity of Greenwood Lake that has the potential to unlock access on the western side of Sterling Forest. Same with the Scunnamunk area and the Goose Pond area. We're working on projects, land protection projects right now that have a trail component to it. And then we, just to complete the commercial on Orange County Land Trust, we also have a bunch of preserves that we're quite proud of that have trails on them. And if you want to get out on any of our trails, I'll put our website in the chat, and you can go see some of the maps of the places that are available to get out there and get out on some of our trails. And with that, I'll just call for any final questions and thank both of our panelists. And I wish that we also had Karen, but thank you for bearing with our technical difficulties. This was our first time on this platform, but I think it worked out quite well. Thank you all for watching. I wish we could see you all, but thanks for participating in the chat, and thanks for coming.
And there's a lot, as Alan and Matt alluded to, we're really blessed with a physical environment like rural, residential, suburban, some small cities. You know, we really got a lot of opportunities to promote positive development. Alan has talked with us about this open space evaluation. We're going to try to gather input about how to preserve open space, which directly relates to trail development. As Matt talked about, preserving tracts of land for future use. So we will do our best to promote what we've been talking about in the last hour.
Bert, we've got one final question for you. Where do we learn more about participating in the Pathways Committee?
You can go to the Orange County Citizen Foundation Vision Hudson Valley website, or you can email me, and I will do what I can to get you connected with the Pathways group. It's a group of about 30, 40 volunteers. We meet every 2 or 3 months. We've been meeting virtually, and in some ways, virtually has worked out better than face-to-face. We've actually had more participation when people don't have to drive to Sugarloaf. So those would be the 2 ways: Orange County Citizens Foundation, Vision Hudson Valley website, or email me. And then perhaps, how would I get my email? I'll put my email.
Bert, I put our email down just so it'll go to Jackie.
Got it.
And
okay.
then she'll connect them to you. No worries. Make it easier for you. All right. I wanted to, Matt's got to hop off. I just wanted to thank our panelists again for taking the time out of their day and educating us on trails in our area. I know we had a couple hiccups. Karen also for being in the backstage with his input. Hopefully next time he can make it onto screen. Again, thank you to our sponsors. We're headed into another coffee break. And our next workshop is Cultivating Safer Spaces with Brittany Hale, and that starts at 4:30. So have a nice day. We'll see you at 4:30.